Okay, so the Lord has been making me very uncomfortable. Very uncomfortable. And um, this is a preview to some stuff that I know I'm going to have to share. And the reason that I know I'm going to have to share it is because in my reading of Hosea, Hosea is a troublemaker. In my reading of Hosea, I have had, and I wrote this already, I wrote part of this. I've had to sit with kings and judges in my reading of Hosea. And God has been exposing stuff like on so many levels. Oh my gosh. First, in my sitting with kings, one of the things that I learned is that um, the majority of the kings that reigned over Judah, the 2 tribe kingdom of Judah, as well as the 10 tribe kingdom of Israel, God did not approve of them. Judah was allowed to last as long as he did because of God's promise to David, because of God's love for David. And these were David's children. So because of that, because of King David, Judah was allowed to last as long as he did. And but there was very few. When I tell you few, I'm kind of looking for what I did with some of them cards. When I tell you few, there was very few kings who did what was right in the eyes of the Lord. Very few. One being Asa, who was the son of Abijam. Asa was the great grandson of Solomon. He did what was right in the eyes of the Lord, even to the point of shutting his own grandmother down for things that she was doing that was not correct. He did what was right in the eyes of the Lord. Another one, and that was from the tribe of Judah. From the tribe of Israel, one of the kings who, I like how they said, he was the best of a bad group. The group was bad, so there were some things that he did that was bad. But of all of these kings, he was the best of all of these kings. Like, his name was Jehu, and what he did was he destroyed Baal out of Israel. He tore down the high places, and I am not alone. I am noticing that I am not alone in feeling like God is preparing us. He's getting us ready. He's cleaning us up. I say that because I've seen other people making comments to that effect, where there's several who are beginning to feel like God is just really dealing with them. And I'm feeling that way too, like God is really dealing with me. And he is showing me things that I know that I need to speak. And let me say this again. God is dealing with me. Let me take that back to Matthew chapter 7, verse number 5. It says, "You hypocrite, first take the plank out of your own eye, and then you will see clearly to remove the speck from your brother's eye." And so I mentioned that in a video that I'm getting ready to release for just tell you guys, it's still Hosea, still Hosea. Still Hosea. Oh my gosh. And Hosea's dealing with me through judges, but in Hosea dealing with me through kings. Now there are some high places that are going to need to be torn down. And one of them, oh my gosh, like one of the things I noticed by some of these kings in Israel, some of these kings, like they had a heart for the Lord. They did so much, but some of them just did not get to that place where they were tearing down the high places. And I'm like, oh, what is so hard about that? God is showing me what's so hard about that. There's just some areas that for real, you just don't want to touch. You don't, but you have to. So for me, and everything that God is showing me through Judges in reference to how to judge, Judges chapter 20. I look forward to sharing that video with you. The precedents that he set, first of all, in the fact that we have to address, which is that scripture that I showed you in Matthew, that we have to address ourselves first. And we have to humble ourselves before the Lord and address our issues before the Lord. And remember that when we do speak these things, we're speaking to our brothers, and we're not speaking to condemn anybody. No, we're speaking to put this on the table. Look, this is how the Lord feels, but they still have the option. Even like when you listen to my videos and you go back and you read these stories, at the end of the day, I'm not telling anybody what to do. I am sharing with you what God showed me, and then there's areas that he's really dealing with me on it, and so I'm sharing with you what God showed me, but it's up to you to read the stories, and then that's between you and God. What you do next with this information is between you and God. So never is it an area of judging. It's not that at all. But I personally do have an accountability to speak, and my accountability to speak comes from Ezekiel chapter 3 verses 17 through 21, where God says, "Son of man, I've made you a watchman for the house of Israel. So hear the word I speak and give them warning from me." But thing about it, in that 3rd chapter, when we were told to hear, this is what he first said. He said, "Son of man, eat what is before you. Eat this scroll, then go and speak to the house of Israel." Eat this scroll, then go and speak to the house of Israel. So I opened my mouth. He gave me the scroll to eat. Then he said to me, "Son of man, eat this scroll I'm giving you and fill your stomach with it." And I ate it, and it tasted the sweetest honey in my mouth. And then he says, "Now go." So I have to sit with this word, and I have to get it in me first. I have to deal with me first. So trust and believe. I'm not trying to take nothing out your eye. Nothing, because I have my own planks to deal with and to deal with before the Lord. But again, as I begin to understand, as I begin to eat this word, I realize that these are warnings, and God is preparing his people. He's getting us ready for what we're all excited for, which is the return of Jesus Christ. He's getting us ready, because remember, Jesus is coming back for a spot-free bride. So as he's getting us ready and cleansing us up, and as I'm beginning to understand it, I'm beginning to see this and see certain things that he's unveiling to me, I'm sharing. And for those who like there's a saying, if it applies, if it don't apply, let it fly. But if it applies, take it to heart. So so anyway, God is making me really uncomfortable, because there is something that I'm being led to address, and I'm letting it get in me and letting him show me what to say, how to share it. How to share it is really important. And he's also sitting me down, just like with those Israelites when they came up against Benjamin, because of the sons of Belial. They didn't get it right to the third time, and it was still about 30 that had a wrong attitude from that. But at the end of the day, when they went, when they dealt with the issue, it was dealt from or addressed from a place of love and mercy. So with this here video, I'm so uncomfortable. Do y'all not, can you not see that I'm uncomfortable with this? With this here video, this is a preview for what's to come. And so what I'm going to say in the preview is this. We hear a lot. We hear things like, there was this movie that was called What Happens in Vegas Stays in Vegas. I have heard people say, females, what happens behind closed doors, stay behind closed doors. Like when they go do their little female meeting, women's meetings and all this, what happens behind closed doors, stay behind closed doors. I've heard this across the pulpit so many times. What happens behind closed doors stays behind closed doors. So even when it comes to meetings, what happens behind closed doors stays behind closed doors. Women's groups, what happens behind closed doors stays behind closed doors. Marriage groups, what happens behind closed doors stays behind. Like people have a bad habit of saying that, and I'm going to tell you why. Because that conveys the idea that what you say and what you do is hidden, when truth of the matter is everything is naked and openly exposed before the Lord. So who are you hiding from? See, that goes back to Adam and Eve, who ate from a tree that they wasn't supposed to, whose eyes were now open, and the first thing they did was they hid. And God was like, where are you? Like, who told you you were naked? Why are you hiding? So I wanna share with you. If I'm gonna tear down, if I'm gonna start tearing down, wait, Lord God, if I'm gonna start tearing down some high places, that will be the first one that I want to expose because of what's coming next. So the first thing that I have to expose is that what happens behind closed doors, baby, it doesn't stay behind closed doors, because what's done in the dark comes to light. So I want to show you this. This is Ezekiel chapter 8, and I am going to read it to you. I need to share this with you. I'm going to read it to you from the NIV. It says, in the 6th year, in the 6th month, on the 5th day, while I was sitting in my house, and the elders of Judah were sitting before me, the hand of the sovereign Lord came upon me there. I looked, and I saw a figure like that of a man. From what appeared to be his waist down, he was like fire. And from there up, his appearance was as bright as glowing metal. He stretched out what looked like a hand and took me by the tuft of my hair. The Spirit lifted me up between earth and heaven, and in visions of God, he took me to Jerusalem, to the entrance to the north gate of the inner court, where the idol that provokes to jealousy stood. And there before me was the glory of God, of the God of Israel, as in the vision I had seen in the plain. Then he said to me, Son of man, look toward the north. So I looked, and in the entrance north of the gate of the altar, I saw this idol of jealousy. And he said to me, Son of man, do you see what they are doing? The utterly detestable things the house of Israel is doing here. Things that would drive me far from my sanctuary. But you will see things that are even more detestable. Then he brought me to the entrance to the court. I looked, and I saw a hole in the wall. He said to me, Son of man, now dig into the wall. So I dug into the wall and saw a doorway there. And he said to me, go in and see the wicked and detestable things they are doing here. So I went in and I looked, and I saw portrayed all over the walls, all kinds of crawling things and detestable animals and all the idols of the house of Israel. In front of them stood 70 elders of the house of Israel. And Jaazaniah, son of Shaphan, was standing among them. Each had a censer in his hand, and a fragrant cloud of incense was rising. He said to me, Son of man, have you seen what the elders of the house of Israel are doing in the darkness, each at the shrine of his own idol? They say, the Lord does not see us. The Lord has forsaken the land. Again, he said, you will see them doing things that are even more detestable. Then he brought me to the entrance to the north gate of the house of the Lord, and I saw women sitting there mourning for Tammuz. He said to me, do you see this, son of man? You will see things that are even more detestable than this. Then he brought me into the inner court of the house of the Lord, and there at the entrance of the temple, to the temple, between the portico and the altar, were about 25 men with their backs towards the temple of the Lord and their faces bowed toward the east. They were bowing down to the sun in the east. He said to me, have you seen this, son of man? Is it a trivial matter for the house of Judah to do the detestable things they are doing here? In other words, is it really a little thing? Must they also fill the land with violence and continually provoke me to anger? Continually provoke me to anger? Look at them putting the branch to their nose. Putting the branch to their nose. Therefore, I would deal with them in anger. I will not look on them with pity or spare them. Although they shout in my ears, I will not listen to them. Although they shout in my ears. These were priests. These were leaders. These were elders. Although they shout in my ears, although they lift up and cry out all these prayers in my ears, he says, I will not listen to them. Chapter 9, Ezekiel. It says, and I heard him call out in a loud voice, bring the guards of the city here, each with a weapon in his hand. And I saw 6 men coming from the direction of the upper gate, which faces north, each with a deadly weapon in his hand. With them was a man clothed in linen who had a writing kit at his side. They came in and stood beside the bronze altar. Now the glory of God, the God of Israel, now the glory of the God of Israel went up from above the cherubim, the cloud, the glory, the cloud. That's that 4th prayer watch I was working on, the glory of the Lord. Now the glory of the God of Israel went up from above the cherubim where it had been and moved to the threshold of the temple. The threshold is the doorway, moved to the door, to the front of the temple. In other words, it came from over it. Then the Lord called to the man clothed in linen who had the writing kit at his side and said to him, go throughout the city of Jerusalem and put a mark on the foreheads of those who grieve and lament over all the detestable things that are done in it. Go throughout the city of Jerusalem. This man, it was a man, this was not an angel, this was a man clothed in linen with an inkhorn. Somebody writing, this is right. He was to go throughout the city of Jerusalem. Jerusalem was the place of worship. It's the seat of true worship. God said, start at his house first. His house, Jerusalem. He says, go throughout the city of Jerusalem and put a mark on the foreheads of those who grieve and lament over all the detestable things that are done in it. He's starting at his house. And he's marking those who are grieving over the stuff done in the church that should not be done. As I listened, he said to the others, follow him through the city and kill without showing pity or compassion. Slaughter old men, young men, maidens, women, and children. The maidens would have been the virgins, women and children. But do not touch anyone who has the mark. Begin at my sanctuary. So they began with the elders who were in front of the temple. Then he said to them, defile the temple and fill the courts with the slain. Go. So they went and began killing throughout the city. While they were killing and I was left alone, I fell face down, crying out, sovereign Lord, are you going to destroy the entire remnant of Israel in this outpouring of your wrath on Jerusalem? The remnant is a small amount that's left of Israel. So he says, now Jerusalem is in Judah, just so you know. He says, are you going to destroy the entire remnant of Israel in this outpouring of your wrath on Jerusalem? In other words, Jerusalem was the place of worship. Israel was the people. He said, are you going to destroy these people because of your outrage at what is happening inside the church? He answered me, the sin of the house of Israel and Judah is exceedingly great. The land is full of bloodshed and the city is full of injustice. Injustice. They say the Lord has forsaken the land, the Lord does not see. So I will not look on them with pity or spare them, but I will bring down their own heads, on their own heads, what they have done. I'm going to read that again. So I will not look on them with pity or spare them, but I will bring down on their own heads what they have done. Then the man in linen with the writing kit at his side brought back word saying, I have done as you commanded. We're living through this right now. We're living through this right now. And yet God tells us what to do. He tells us in Chronicles, 2 Chronicles, chapter 7, he tells us what to look for. And when we see it happening, he tells us what to do. Even Ezekiel knew what to do. Ezekiel hit his knees. He humbled himself, hit his knees, and cried out to the Lord. God said that if we humble ourselves, if we pray, if we seek his face and turn around from our wicked ways, he said, then he will hear from heaven. He'll forgive us for our sin and he'll heal the land. But we're not doing it. We're not doing it. So at that point that we are not doing it, it is at that point that I begin to look at me. It is at that point that I begin to look at myself. And it's at that point that I don't worry about what everybody else is doing. I'm going to make sure I hit my knees. I'm going to make sure I hit my knees. It is at that point that I begin to take to heart God's word, I say that I'm a believer, then I'm about to start acting like. See, Jesus said, oh, I'm getting off. Here we go again. Here we go again. Jesus said to everybody that he healed or cleansed, like I'm going to do the leper. He said to that leper, be clean, be clean, be clean. If I am going to believe, I need to be this word. I need to believe and I need to walk it out and act it right. Act it out. He cleansed the leper and he said, be clean. He told his disciples, he said, you're clean because of your word, my word that is in you. You're clean because of my word that is in you. Be clean. I got to be this word. If I'm going to believe it, I have to live it. If I'm going to believe it, I have to live it. So that's me, and that's where I am. That's what I am. And with God's commission upon me to speak it, I don't need four walls to speak it. Definitely don't need platforms to speak it or microphones to speak it. I just share it. I write it and I share it. Just like this man with the inkhorn who put a mark on the forehead of those who were sighing and groaning. Like, I identify with this guy so much. I identify with this guy so much. And with Ezekiel, whom God said, eat this scroll. Fill your own stomach with it first. Just like Jesus said, hypocrite, take the plank out of your eye first, so that you could see to take the speck out of somebody else's eye. So I identify with this word. I eat this word. I eat it. Even back in Judges, where those brothers had to come up against, they had to come up against their brother Benjamin because God said so, but their attitude had to be right. So I have to sit with this word and I have to understand it and I have to address myself before the Lord and I have to get myself together. And if I believe it so much, if I believe it, catch this, if I believe it so much and I believe what he's saying so much, then out of love, because I believe this so strongly, out of love, I don't want now this to happen to you, that for which I'm changing or trying my best to change, asking God to please help me, please help me. I want the same for you. I want you to prosper because of love. And so I will share this word with you in a spirit of love, not judgment, not judgment, not judgment, none whatsoever. Because what affects you affects me. And for those who care about me, what affects me affects you. So, yeah, God has been making me real uncomfortable. And I got an uncomfortable word to share. And it's coming. It's coming. But I got another YouTube to work on in front of this. But as long as I'm in Hosea and I finish with Hosea, I know that I'm going to be between Judges and Kings, and God is getting me ready and preparing me and doing a work in me. And so, yeah, there is a real huge uncomfortable message that I know I'm going to have to share. It's coming.